So a lot of us have been playing Modern lately. Caleb, Brian, and I for PTQs. And Josh, you played in a 5K last weekend in Minnesota. Is that correct?
I did, yep.
How did that go?
Well, I had two buys, and then I lost two rounds and defeated mono black vampires. But then I managed to win the rest for a top 16, but I died in like round five. So it was fine though. I love playing modern, so the tournament was still a lot of fun. I lost to Scapeshift in one close game and one not very close game, and then I lost to Blue Red in three very close games. So it was close.
Any particular plays or things noteworthy in that tournament?
I think I messed up against Blue White Red. I was playing against Greg Orange. In game one, I sin collected him and saw his hand, and he had a bunch of cryptics and paths, and I was able to just keep playing lands until I could cast two spells in a turn, and I decided to cast a Ranger Vios first and then a Birthing Pod to resolve my pod. But on second thought, and after I looked back, I should have played pod first, hoping he would counter that so I could resolve Ranger. Normally you always want to resolve your pod, and that's like your number one priority in that matchup. But just the way the game was going, I really needed to resolve some sort of creature. Like he was at a low life total and I had a township, so if I would have just been able to resolve the Ranger, I could have like beaten him down with that. At least made him use his mana to like do that, and then I could have played some. I had a couple 2-drops in hand, so.
You have to grind a ton of magic before baiting with the wrong spell is the autopilot mistake you make. Like
Yeah.
your autopilot is baiting to try and stick pod.
Yeah. I mean, I even thought, like, before I did, I'm like, man, maybe I should just resolve Ranger here. But then I was like, no, I gotta resolve Pod, of course. But and that,
It's the name of the deck, Birthing Pod.
Yeah,
the deck's not
exactly.
called Ranger Vios.
Exactly.
So I was also in attendance at this event, and something I've noticed about your play is that you tend to keep a lot. Well, I'm not gonna say a lot of one-hand lands, but like you're more inclined to keep a hand with good spells and maybe insufficient mana than a hand like mulliganing to better mana, which I think is like something that differentiates. I think that a lot of very good players is like, well, I can always draw a land, where like if you keep the hand that has the good mana, if you draw more lands, like that's terrible. Could you maybe expound on that a little bit? Maybe using that example. I don't remember the whole hand, but it was like Godless Shrine and no green source on a 6-card hand.
Yeah. Well, actually, with Pod, there's definitely examples of both, but the hand in question was against Scapeshift, and I kept on the play in game 2. I kept Godless Shrine, Thoughtseize, Sin Collector, Wall of Roots, Voice of Resurgence, Eternal Witness. There are a few reasons led me to keep the hand. If I do draw a green source, the hand is great. I have early pressure, I have a bunch of disruption. I'm probably going to win if I draw a green source right away. If I don't draw a green source right away, I still have like a Thoughtseize to maybe try to buy myself some time. And second of all, against Scapeshift, because they have Anger's postboard, you really can't afford to not have more threats. Like going down in cards is so bad against decks with sweepers. So like you really need like pressure and a couple pieces of disruption. So if you mold a 5, having like 2 pieces of disruption, some way to pressure them, and lands to cast them is like very, very not very likely. So I figured I had a better chance just to draw a green source. And as is, I missed for like I bricked off for like 2 turns before I hit, and the game was still kind of close. So like I still if I would have drawn a green source even on turn 3 rather than turn 4, or turn 2 rather than turn 3, it would have been fine. But instead I missed my land drop 3 times instead of twice, so I ended up losing. But yeah, I think you just have to give yourself the best chance to win, and a lot of times that is just simply keeping a really loose hand and drawing the right land you need to make. Because then it comes up a lot with a deck like Mono Blue, more so than Pod. Like Mono Blue, you have to keep a million hands that are just like Island, Mutavault, Cloudfin Raptor, Tidebinder Mage, or whatever. Or even just like you mold a 6 and keep Island, Cloudfin Raptor, Tidebinder, Frostbirth, Thassa, or something. Like you just have to keep those hands. And it's another deck where like all your cards, your cards aren't very good, right? You're playing like Tidebinder Mages and Frostbirth Mages. You really need a lot of a critical mass of like these creatures to attack them with. So like you can't really afford to go down in cards, and those hands are great if you just draw 1 island. You're probably going to win. So I keep hands like that a lot. Where a hand like four islands and like 4 islands, Cloudfin Raptor, Master. Like I guess I'd probably keep that as a bad example, but like 4 islands, Cloudfin Raptor, Cyclonic Rift. I would mulligan that for sure. Whereas I would definitely keep a hand that was like an island and a bunch of 1 and 2 drops. So just because those hands, like you can't really afford to draw 2 or 3 lands, you'll just just lose. Like, and even your one Clash Raptor, like even if you draw like 2 spells, you still only have like 3 spells then basically. So you're probably still not going to win. Whereas the other hand, if you just draw land, you're in great shape. So.
Yeah, and in the interest of fairness, I believe I also heard you say that Birds of Paradise, Birthing Pod, 5 lands is a Snapkeep not close.
That one, yeah, that probably would be close. But the hand that we were talking about was against Junk. It was game 2 on the draw against Junk. I kept, and I would keep this every time. And it's like not the top. It's definitely the lower range of your keep hands. But it's like it was 5 lands, Birds Noble Hire with a Gavany Township. And Gavany Township just makes your hand insane. Like if they don't kill your guys, you start activating Township on turn 3. So you just like make a bunch of flyers. It's hard for them to beat. If you draw any creature, your hand's going to be very good.
I agree that hand is insane, but probably for different reasons than you think it's insane.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I've never been attracted to playing Pod, is that you just have to keep those, you have to keep a very wide range of hands, and you need to have like some mastery with the deck. Like you were going into the thought process for keeping the single Godless Shrine hand earlier, and I was thinking there's no way. But I mean, that's also just not knowing the deck, not knowing the matchup. You have to put the time in.
That's part of the nature of the deck too, is you have all these one-ofs that you're ready for all these different situations, but then you're just exposing yourself to these really weird opening hands a lot of the time.
Definitely. It's a little better post-board when you have a little control of what one-ofs are in your deck, but yeah.
Right.
Aside from this Modern 5K in Minnesota this past weekend, have you been playing a lot of Modern? Is there much reason to?
Not really, no. It's mostly because there is really no reason to. If there was, I would love to be playing. But the next Grand Prix is in like January, I think, in Omaha. So I'll definitely play a lot more once we get closer to that. But for now, I don't see myself playing. Maybe a few games on Moto here and there, just when I'm bored. I'm not going to play Modern seriously for at least another 3 months, unfortunately.
So I'm guessing you've been doing a lot of Vintage Masters to prep for Worlds, yeah?
I have not. Skogen is just daggering me because I happened to miss Worlds by 1 point this year.
Yes. Oh, it's a good dagger, though.
But, we've been...
Does that dagger fit right where a single point would also fit? Like, it's just this hole in the side of you?
Luckily, I've gotten daggered many, many, many times by now, so it's,
I was sort of mashing this one a couple weeks ago.
No, it's not just you.
So what have you been doing in lieu of this?
I've mostly just been playing Standard for these WMTQs, or at least trying to play Standard. I often get distracted and end up playing League or something, or Hearthstone maybe. But I've been trying to put in some work. So I've tried a bunch of different Revelation builds. I decided I didn't like any of those. I tried mono blue a little more, and just don't like that. So I'm just gonna play green white this weekend. So,
okay.
But,
I didn't know you played League.
Oh yeah, I've actually played with you a few times, but
oh really?
It was a while ago.
My memory is pretty bad.
Yeah, I mean it was probably like a year and a half ago. So
okay.
One of you was more sober than the other.
Yeah, I'm not very good. I'm like low silver. So
okay.
Oh, Caleb's not very good either.
I'm definitely not. Although I'm almost back to plat. I just hit my Gold 1 promos before we started recording earlier. I was gonna stream today, and then I started winning at League of Legends. So you can't stream and like I don't know. You can't just.
You could stream League.
I could. I thought about that. I don't know who would want to watch that though. Like I'm not known for playing League of Legends, and the people watching would have to really love Amumu because that's all I play. So it's like it would just be watching me play this one champion over and over again as I like do the same things every single game. Yeah, so it would be narrow even for people that didn't play that game and not Magic the Gathering.
Yeah.
Well, it's been almost a month since the Pro Tour, in which it was Standard. Do you think the format has changed a whole lot since that time, Josh?
Not really, other than the fact that the red decks are a lot more popular. Everybody kind of knows and respects them now, whereas before, like going into the PT, we thought, well, people might play mono red. Like we had a version of the Rabble red deck ourselves, and like this deck's okay, but I think their list was a little better than ours, so that's why they probably played it and we didn't. But we didn't actually expect people to play that. So I think the big difference now is people actually expect to play against red. So people have Drown and Sorrows on their sideboard, stuff like just other I've seen some burn decks with Electrickery even, stuff like that. Whereas before nobody had that stuff. So it doesn't really change the format that much, but I think that's the only thing that's really changed.
Speaking of Rabblemaster, have you seen that rug cord deck?
Oh yeah.
Where you can use Young Pyromancer and Rabblemaster to like cord for Keranos on turn 4 or something?
I have, yeah. I haven't seen it in action, but I saw a couple lists and I've seen people talking about it. I know Sam did a video with it earlier this week. I'm meaning to watch it, but I haven't had time.
It was a pretty interesting video. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I definitely have been meaning to watch that. I need to get that in. It looks pretty sweet. I don't know if it's good or not.
Yeah, I don't know either. And the mana base is a little questionable. He's got like 14 blue sources for like 2 main deck blue cards, and I'm just like, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
But
there's the guy that's driving this weekend to the WMCQ he said he's probably going to play that deck. So we'll see how it goes for him.
It's like exactly
that was like a few days ago that I talked to him, so he might have come to his senses by now. But we'll see. Who knows? Maybe the deck's insane and he's going to win the tournament.
It's exactly the sort of deck that I enjoy playing, but I just haven't had time because I'm also testing for a vintage tournament. The vintage championships are happening on Saturday, and that's just like so much more EV than the WMCQ.
Yeah,
because if you win the vintage championships, you get a foil set of freaking vintage online. Yeah.
I have also been testing for that, but you probably know more about the format than I do. My vintage experience has been more or less flailing wildly against probably real decks. I'm not sure if they are or not, while I try to have Force of Will in my deck and figure it out.
Did you qualify, or are you trying to qualify?
I'm qualified, so I'll be playing on Saturday.
Okay.
I heard it's really hard to qualify for that because the queues just don't fire.
Yeah, they don't fire.
Which I'm so excited about.
Which makes it so much better even for the actual event.
The event's going to be like 50 people or something?
And all the good players in like Europe and stuff, like they can like maybe stay up and try and like start a tournament at 4 in the morning or something ridiculous.
Yeah.
And so it's really just like, here, American pros that happen to play vintage, would you like this incredibly high EV tournament? We weren't expecting it to be this, but it is.
It seems pretty insane. I don't blame you for skipping the WMCQ.
It does seem a little bit tough. Like there are like Joshua Layton's qualified, LSV's qualified, Randy Bueller's qualified.
Is Ocho qualified?
Is who? David Ochoa? I don't know what his moto name is, or I could tell you. I actually have a list of people that are qualified right now, and I have them all set up, like separated.
I imagine Raptor would go to the WMCQ, but maybe not.
But the WMCQ's on Sunday, right?
Yeah.
So he can play. He can do both, right?
Yeah. I have to. Yeah. Actually, I didn't even think about that. I probably should have tried to queue for that thing because I'm going to be sitting at the convention center Saturday because there's a PTQ going on, but I can't play, so I'll just be sitting there, doing nothing. I should have. Try to queue for that.
You should, yeah.
I still could, I guess, one of the qualifiers run until.
You could set up a booth and sign playmats.
I actually haven't played a game of vintage in probably 4 years, though. So.
Yeah, it's Magic. I mean, it's all Magic, right?
Yeah.
Like they play a spell, you have to read it, and you're like, oh, so this will kill me if it resolves. I guess I'll counter it. That's why I play Force of Will.
There are a lot of subtle mistakes you can make in vintage. Like I've almost seen 0 actual egregious errors. It's always things like, well, I didn't play my Mox because I wanted to like show that I was weak, and then my opponent cast Time Twister, and that sucked, or like things like that.
Yeah.
Then you lose because you're a mana short or what have you.
Yeah,
that happens to me a lot when I'm playing Storm, because I'm like, I want to hold on to the artifacts to build up Storm count, and then my opponent's like, turn 1 Trinisphere, and then I'm just like, oh, okay.
That's going to be a fun one.
I've got all these Moxes that I can't cast.
Yeah. Last time I played Vintage, the Mud deck was like one of the best decks in the format. So is that still pretty good?
It's still pretty good, but it's worse than the other decks that people are playing. Like one of the nice things about playing Vintage on Moto is that Wastelands are ridiculously expensive. It's just like becoming the most expensive card on Moto because it wasn't reprinted in Vintage Masters, and so more people. It seems like more people playing these Vintage tournaments have power than have Wastelands, which is awesome because screw that card. But it's really important for the Mud strategy to have 4 Wastelands, which makes and I don't like playing against that deck, so I'm kind of glad that it's a little bit nerfed.
I'm kind of in a small camp where I think that Mud is more insufferable than Dredge, and I don't think it's close.
I would rather play against Mud just because you can main deck Artifact Disruption, and everybody does. Like everyone has a few Ancient Grudges or Trigon Predators or something. But like, who main decks Graveyard Hate?
Well,
in
like
Vintage?
that's not my problem with the deck. Like my problem with Mud is that like people will always argue that there's like this reasonable amount of play to the deck, but there's really not. It's like I have my workshop and I'm going to cast as many things as I can with it.
As opposed to that dredge deck that's like super
Like the
skill
dredge
intensive.
deck, like sideboard games, like the mulligan decisions are actually tough at that point. Like game 1, obviously you mulligan to Bazaar, but like in game 2, it's like your opener can have Bazaar and still be terrible, right? Like what if they have Leyline? What if they have Cage? How many cages can I beat? Like how can I sequence this to break that cage and get as much value before like he can just vampiric tutor here and get a second cage, you know? So it's actually like a lot going on there. Where with Mud is like, here's my list of artifacts. Play as many of them as you can, as fast as you can. Like this is Zap Brannigan deck, you know.
The dredge lists have actually been getting kind of interesting. I've seen a lot of lists with like they almost all play Mental Misstep because it's just basically a free roll towards beating a cage or a Nihil Spellbomb, and then it's also like just a piece of disruption. So that's sweet. But then I've also seen lists playing 4 Force of Will, 4 Mindbreak Trap. And I'm just thinking like, what on earth? Like, I don't know. I might play Fairy Macabre in the Vintage Champs as my graveyard hate of choice, which seems really bizarre. But
beat a Mindbreak Trap,
right? Yeah, beat a Mindbreak Trap, beat a Mental Misstep.
I think that they are most weak generally to Yixlid Jailer. If you have black mana, like you probably want 2 or 3 copies of that one, just because they can't misstep it, you can't ingot chewer it. Like that's usually the best one. Obviously, like you can force of will it, but that doesn't seem super consistent or likely to me.
And when I cast Yixlid Jailer, it can trigger my Vengevines.
You can also trade it and act other bridges. Just all the value.
I played Dredge once and had an opponent do that. Like he cast Yixlid Jailer, and I was like on the cast Narca Amoeba plan at that point, and like he just attacks with it. I was like, what is happening?
Alright, kill you, I guess. I didn't think this was going to be a line, but now that you decided to take us down this...
to get on 2 damage.
It's like the rich, fat, portly businessman that like voluntarily walks down the dark alley for like no reason. He just wanted to check out a dark alley, and you're sitting there with like a knife and like 2 of your thug buddies. Like, what's going on? Why would he choose to do this?
So going back to Standard, because that's sort of the relevant event for this weekend, for Josh at least, I think that the consensus is most of us are not going to be playing Standard this weekend. For the Pro Tour, a lot of...
Not going to be playing what? Extended? Is that what you said? Well, I don't think any of us are playing Extended this weekend.
I wish that was
for all of our souls, I hope none of us are playing Extended this weekend.
Extended was sweet.
I liked it when it was big Extended.
Yeah, I like big Extended more.
Double Standard is kind of...
Yeah.
Small Extended was like my best format ever, but I agree that big Extended was more sweet.
Yeah. So... But yeah.
So you're on this green-white deck, and so you were saying when we were having a lot of issues trying to go live, like I don't think we have any discussion of the matchups there. And so like, I think you were saying that the deck is like actually good against control, which you wouldn't normally think of a green-white deck.
Yeah,
but like you have a lot of flash tools, and like Voice of Resurgence is sweet.
Yep.
And I think you have some pretty good sideboard cards there too, as well, with like Mistcutter Hydra or...
I'm not playing Mistcutters, but I have like an extra Boon Satyr, a couple gods. I mean, it's all Craig's list, so I don't want to take any credit for it. But Craig's got like an extra Boon Satyr, 2 Gods Willing, and a bunch of the 2/2 Pro Blue Flash guys, Skylashers, and then just some more Planeswalkers. It's like 2 extra Ajanis in the sideboard. I don't know if the Ajanis come in against control. I haven't played the matchup that much yet to decide.
Skogen knows. He's just like shaking his head.
I can imagine they're probably a little expensive. They don't actually do that much, so I can see that. But yeah, so you have all this instant speed stuff. So like Wrath's actually Wrath's still good against you, but it's not nearly as backbreaking as normally like your control deck against your green-white deck. Wrath is like the best card, but you can still just, if they Wrath on turn 4 and you Advent, they're still, especially then if you have it in Johnny or something, they're just almost instantly dead.
So he said mono blue's a bad matchup. How is burn?
Yeah.
There's a few tools for burn, right? There's some lifelink stuff.
Yeah, I think Craig actually doesn't have like any unflinching courage or anything at his sideboard. You just have to just be aggressive and outrace them.
Yeah, I'd have to run the unflinching courages. I'd have to. Yeah. Like I just want to play this card that says I win and I don't have to think.
And oftentimes they have to like burn your creatures to win, so I think God's Willing's very good against them.
Okay,
like at least from I read a couple articles from people playing burn, because I was considering the deck a little bit for myself.
God's Willing doesn't fizzle Skullcrack, right? Because it has 2 targets, or no, it shocks something and then it deals 3 to them if it does resolve.
Searing Blood.
Searing Blood. Yeah, sorry.
If the creature dies, it deals 3.
The creature has to die.
Okay, so God's Willing is just like really good against that card.
Yeah. So it but the burn decks that the people that are playing burn, their articles that I've read have said like their creature matchups are pretty good because you just like play a control deck. You just have so much removal for all their creatures, and then you just like kill them with a Chandra's Phoenix or a Young Pyromancer. So you have God's Willings to kind of combat that a bit, and then your deck is just very fast. If you play a 4/4 on turn 3, they're gonna have to deal with it. They can't just keep burning you while you're attacking them. So I'm not sure exactly if the matchup's great, but I don't think it's that bad.
I've played it on the burn side. I played it on the burn side, and like God's Willing is a nice tool, but you also have to play off curve if you want to leave up God's Willing, and they can kill you just very fast if that's your plan. So, it's a weird matchup. They can just draw too many lands and you overrun them at that point because they don't have that many spells that really trade very well with 3 and 4 toughness creatures.
Yeah.
And I think if you have a 3 toughness guy, your plan should just be to run it out, and then with the weaker guys, you probably would sit on the God's Willing.
Yeah, I would like the deck has so many creatures that I imagine you can construct a game where you play a 1-drop and then a 2-drop, and then on turn 3 you just play another 2-drop.
Yeah.
So you're still playing a big guy every turn. You're just on turn 3 or on turn 4 you cast a second Smiter or something, and then leave up God's Willing.
Depending on how many Chain to the Rocks.
What's that?
Depending on how many Chain to the Rocks that they have, between main and side, Voice of Resurgence gets way better, and that's just a variable you're not going to be sure of when you cast it.
Yeah. No, for sure. Like I said, I think the matchup probably isn't is probably unfavorable, but I don't think it's that bad. I haven't actually played it that much, so I'm not sure.
Well, at the Pro Tour,
yeah.
At the Pro Tour, you and a number of the other players on face-to-face ended up playing blue-white. You mentioned that you were considering burn. Are you considering blue-white or any other decks?
I was considering blue-white. I tried to do a lot of work on blue-white this week on Magic Online, but I eventually decided I didn't really like it. I tried a list with I really like D-Spheres, so I was trying a bunch of D-Spheres. I tried a list with D-Spheres and Quickens. I tried a list that was just D-Spheres and straight blue-white with only 4 Scrylands, and then a couple 2 or 3 gates, so your Azorius Guild gate, so your lands came into play untapped a lot. I tried a more heavy. At the Pro Tour, we played all 12 Scrylands, and we played black spells in our sideboard, 2 Thoughtseize and 3 Dark Betrayal. So I tried a list similar to that. I tried a Planar Cleansing list. I didn't really like any of those. They were fine, but just the other decks are just doing so many powerful things with Thoughtseize and stuff. I don't know. The deck is just I feel like it's a little too underpowered right now, but it doesn't really have a nut draw. You have to grind out all your games. With the Planar Cleansing version, I'm a little worried about going to time, so I just decided to not play it. The deck always sounds great. Whenever I think about it, whenever I talk about it, the deck sounds awesome, and I want to play it. It happened at the Pro Tour, it happened at the Pro Tour Dublin, a couple Grand Prix. Then every time I play it, it just doesn't quite work out as well as you think it would. So it's kind of a trap, I think. But
it's a trap.
So I decided not to go back.
For you
I think it's less so a trap and more the fact that you really that deck stresses more than any deck having the exact right list for the weekend.
Yeah.
With mono black, it's I'm just going to keep playing these pack rats and Thoughtseizes, and people are going to keep losing to me. But with blue white, it's I don't know how many last breaths I need this week, and I don't know if I want to be D-Sphere or Planar Cleansing.
Yeah.
It was just a lot of tough card slots you have to make a call on on a regular basis. They just change.
So unless you're Wafo Tapa, I'm glad that he made it into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, me too.
That guy.
Yeah, he's always been. I've always really liked him. He seems really cool. I've never actually really interacted with him, but
I haven't
he seems awesome.
I haven't either really, but I agree. He seems really cool. He's always like making good decks. People that like make good decks and do well with them are impressive.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, we are back. There was a quick little blip there. We'll edit that out in post. So Josh, you were saying something about that crazy Japanese Modern GP?
Yeah. I was, you just said, we were talking about off the top and how you respect people who, make their own decks and win with them. And this I don't know if you guys saw the results from this GP, but there's like this crazy affinity list that I think got second place, and then Shouta got ninth or 10th with a Tezzeret list. That looked pretty sweet.
Yeah, you definitely top 16. That's actually not the first time the affinity list has shown up. It got fourth in a PTQ. Actually, fairly early on in the season, pretty much right after Ensoul Artifact became legal. That was one of the lists in the top 8. Was basically that list. I don't think he was main decking Thoughtseize, but he definitely had the 4 Goy, 4 Galv Blast, 4 Shrapnel Blast.
Okay,
so
I heard about
the deck.
Yeah, I heard about a PTQ in Japan. Somebody top forward with an Ensoul Artifact affinity list. I didn't realize he had Goyfs and Trap Blasts and stuff.
Well, someone won that same tournament with an Ensoul Artifact affinity list, but the rest of the list was pretty standard.
Okay, maybe that's what I'd heard about that.
Right, but the fourth place list was ridiculous. It was the list that top aided the Grand Prix, basically.
Yeah. That looked pretty sweet, I thought.
Goyf seems like a good way to combat the hate for the affinity deck. Like, you're already playing all these gold lands anyway. Like, you're gonna play Glimmer Void. Like, the chromatic stars certainly seem a little underpowered for Modern, but you're just casting a lot of very efficient, very powerful spells with them.
Yeah, and just the fact that your Tarmogoyfs are always going to be huge too is pretty nice. You're always going to have an artifact in your graveyard and an instant and probably a creature. And hopefully they have a fetch land, so it's like a minimum 4/5. Or you're playing Jund and they're like, average like 3/4 or whatever. So it just seems like that's pretty sweet too.
Yeah, so you have the Goyfs are 2 mana 5/6s, and they're not artifacts, so they don't die to that hate. And then you've got the 4 Ensoul artifacts that you can put on like a Darksteel something or other, if you really want to, and those have haste basically. So if you have you have enough ways of just doming your opponent for like 5 damage on turn 2 that suddenly filling your deck up with Galv Blasts and Shrapnel Blasts just makes sense. You only need to hit them once with a plating basically on any old thing.
Yeah, and the guy's deck tech, he was saying how Ensoul Artifact, he doesn't look to make a threat that's going to end the game. He looks at Ensoul Artifact as just a 5-point burn spell. That's all it needs to do usually.
A 5-point burn spell that if they don't answer it, they're just dead.
Yep.
Seems like the best kind of burn spell.
I agree.
And if you're talking about great deck builders, Shota Yasuoka, he's easily my favorite deck builder. That being said, I would probably never play one of his decks. But every time that I see him having a deck and watching him play, I was like, this guy is so much better at Magic than just everybody else.
Yeah,
I can't even wrap my head around trying to build or play that deck.
I disagree entirely. I would definitely play his decks.
Shadows came up with some pretty crazy stuff. I still remember his 4-color Tezzeret. He loves Tezzeret apparently. He had this 4-color Tezzeret deck in Pro Tour Nagoya. When everybody was playing this super fast Tempered Steel Affinity decks basically. And it's this slow 4-color, and I think he top 16 that Pro Tour. He's just insane.
So yeah, well, Tezzeret is arguably the most powerful planeswalker. The only reason that it's not played as much as Karn and Jace is because of the restrictions that it puts on your deck.
Yeah,
you have to run this critical mass of artifacts for it to be doable. But when you get the shell right, the deck's very good. I've definitely won a few tournaments with Tezzeret.
Yep.
Speaking of a critical mass of artifacts, going back to that affinity deck, I don't know what you guys are thinking. I think that deck is pretty bad looking.
I don't know how good it is. It looks freaking
radio
sweet.
plating or playing.
It's playing plating. It's got,
is it?
Yeah, it's got 4 platings in there.
How is it able to play plating?
Well,
there's no Ravagers or Steel Overseers.
Yeah, you're just not playing the bad cards.
It plays 4 Memnite, 4 Ornithopter, 4 Springleaf Drum, 4.
Caleb, you said it wasn't playing the bad cards.
What did I say?
You said it wasn't playing the bad cards, and now Josh is saying it still has Memnite and Ornithopter.
Yeah. Well, you need those for the mana to work.
Ornithopter's a 5/5.
That's just
Two mana.
Not playing Ravager is just mind blowing to me because that card has so much play to it. Like, all of your opponent's blocks are just shitty. All of your opponent's removal spells are just shitty. Like, you can just do so many things with Ravager that not playing it seems just mind-blowing to me.
Well,
like, Tarmogoyf is sweet, but...
You can't sacrifice Tarmogoyf to Ravager. That's why it's the worst card. Yeah.
I heard you lost in the final of PTQ with Affinity this weekend, Skogen.
Yeah, I did.
Did you play... I assume your list was way more standard.
No, not necessarily. It was a mono blue version. Not playing Glimmer Void. I hate Glimmer Void, but I was playing 4 islands and then the Ensoul artifacts, and then 4th Hypercast.
That's basically the list that I shipped you a while ago, right?
Yeah, and then I sort of added Spellskite to the main deck and changed a few other things in the sideboard. I really like the deck, but I don't know how to play against fairies. It was my loss in the finals and my loss in the Swiss.
Shouldn't that just be like a really good matchup for Affinity? It seems like fairies should be a really good matchup for Affinity.
I have no idea.
Their Blossom seems very hard to beat.
Actually, yeah, they're like 1/1 flyers are pretty strong against Affinity.
Especially when you cut Galvanic Blast. Like, that matchup seems a lot harder at that point.
Yeah,
and like
you're probably right.
An option if you don't have the Glimmer Voids in the main deck either.
Yeah.
And they have Purple's Recalls.
Right.
That's one benefit of playing of Tarmogoyf is
Tarmogoyf dodges all day. It dodges, Bats, Stony Silence, Creeping Corrosion, all of them. You didn't have Illness, did you?
I haven't tried the deck, but I'm a little wary of it.
Yeah. I mean, I have no clue if it's actually good, but it looks really sweet.
It just top 8 at a Grand Prix. Of course it's good.
Yeah, I was more surprised as to how much burn there was there. That was another deck that I was really considering playing for this past.
Burn is very, very good in Modern. I was telling you before you asked me, you had a list of decks that you're like, what should I play this weekend? And I told you out of those decks you should play Burn.
The whole Modern PTQ
Burn won
season.
The Minneapolis PTQ.
Yeah, it also won the Ames PTQ the day before. And it won the JP.
I've been playing Dragon's Claws in the sideboard of Delver, and everyone's like, what are you really bringing these Dragon's Claws in again? Is it just Burn? I'm like, yeah, just that deck that I face every single PTQ at least once. They can't beat this card, and it's like a terrible matchup without it. So, like, why wouldn't I play this card that's going to, like... And then I like want to win an in with it, and
I've been thinking about adding a Core Firewalker to my pod sideboard.
Yeah, why not? Why not?
I don't know if it's the best option though. I gotta think, because I mean, I know something that dodges Skullcrack. So, like, you could just play Baloth, but Baloth is very expensive, and if they shot Skullcrack, it was nothing. So.
And they always have the Skullcrack. It's not just Skullcrack; it's also Flames of the Blood Hand. Like the odds of them not having a Skullcrack effect, and they're going to leave it up against you because you're playing the 10 Kitchen Finks deck. So Core Firewalker sounds way better than
I agree.
The other options.
So
you can clone it too, right?
There's an even better option than that. What's that?
You can clone it too, right?
Yes. Yep. They can. Yeah, they can't even target it.
Yeah.
That's pretty sweet.
Seems really good.
Or I guess the clones nowadays are Metamorph, so targeting it doesn't really matter. It's not Image anymore, but still.
Really? Why is Metamorph better? Just because you can clone Pod, or is it just better than Chain?
We don't play blue mana, so.
Oh, that's a good reason. That's a pretty strong reason.
Even so, it still might be better because in the mirror, if you have Metamorph, being able to Quarter Calling for a Birthing Pod essentially when they have a pod out is a very, very strong play. So it might even still be better. I don't know. It's very close though.
And this is something that you in particular should be very concerned about, right, Josh?
This
was lost in the earlier version that we had, but as part of the journalism that we do and the research that we do for this show, I interviewed a close friend of Josh who stated that Josh has, quote, never won a sanctioned pod mirror, end quote, and this source further stated, quote, he's like 10% in that matchup. Why are you so bad at Birthing Pod?
Well, that's a good question. But yeah, it came from at GP Richmond. I had 3 losses in the tournament, 2 in the Swiss and 1 in the top 8, and they were all to the mirror match. And then there was another GP2. I don't remember. It was like 2 or 3 years ago now. But again, like all my losses were against Pod. And then I played a thing online, a series against Sam Party. We played a Pod mirror. And we both streamed it. And we played 3 matches, and he beat me all 3 matches. So you just can't ever win. But the last GP, I was 3-1 in Boston against the mirror, so I kind of broke my streak there. I had to play against it playing for day 2. I played it 3 times on day 1, and I went 2-1. So
sounds like you've played more Pod mirrors than I've played against Pod with any deck. That's what it sounds like.
Many Pod mirrors.
Well, you mentioned Sam, and I actually messaged him last night seeking some guidance as to how you can improve your mirror match with some key sideboard cards. He never got back to me. He probably thought that I was just some random creep, which is true.
Absolutely
But
true.
I came up with the following for you. Let me know if any of these sound appealing. You could splash red for Anger of the Gods, or you could just cast them off of your Birds of Paradise. That works too.
All
You
right.
could cut your Birthing Pods for 4 Grafdigger's Cage, or you
Alright.
could play Kiki Pod instead.
Well, I don't know. I kind of like the whole birds into anger plan. They'll never see it coming.
What, you could also board an Anger of the Gods against your opponents that are playing Blood Moon, and then it fixes for you.
That's true. That's true. You know, if they happen to be playing Magus of the Moon, it really gets them. So, but yeah, as far as actually getting better at the pod mirror, like playing Metamorph instead of Restoration Angel is very important. You know, it comes up, like I said, a lot of times they have a pod, you don't, but you have a cord, so then suddenly you also have a pod. You know, and to end of their turn, you can like pod for a cord or cord for a pod and untap and kill their pod or whatever. Whereas otherwise, you just have to like use your cord to kill their pod and, you know, be at parity. Whereas now you're ahead. I think the matchup has a reasonable amount of play to it, so it definitely helps to be practiced in the matchup. You know, it helps a lot to just like knowing how like things go. Like generally, it's weird. It's usually like the second person to play the pod, whoever plays the second pod is usually going to win, because if you play your pod and, you know, turn your voice into a Finks or whatever, and then they play a pod and turn their voice into a Reclamation Sage, suddenly they're way ahead. You know, so oftentimes it's right to sandbag your pod until after they play theirs, or, you know, that's why a lot of people board out Spellskite in the mirror, which I don't think is correct, because it allows you to play the pod first, and then just get a Spellskite and try to protect it. So just like little things like that.
Do you board and discard in the mirror because there's the chance of them sandbagging a pod?
It's a pretty debated topic. I find myself wanting to bring in like 1 or 2 Thoughtseize. It really just depends how many cards I want to bring out, you know, for whatever list I'm happen to be playing at the time. I don't like to overload on removal because they're on discard rather, because the matchup is still very attrition-y. You know, it's not just all about pod. I've certainly had games where I have had a pod and lost, you know, plenty of times. I've beaten a lot of opponents who have a pod and I don't, you know. Pod, like, the deck pays a lot of life, especially when you're potting. So if you can, you know, make a flyer or two, like especially like a Linvala, or you know, if you have a couple birds with a township or whatever, oftentimes you can just kill them, like, and it's usually like very close, like you kill them just before they like really stabilize. But you know, so, and Thoughtseize obviously, you know, is just more, you know, causing more damage. So, and the matchup is a lot of games where neither player has a pod. The game's very attrition. You're trading off all your guys. So suddenly you draw this, you know, Thoughtseize on turn 6. Well, you guys know how it all goes. You know, in the Jund mirrors, you don't want your Thoughtseizes and stuff like that. You know, it's kind of the same concept there.
It seems like the correct number of Thoughtseize to be running would just be the number of birthing pods that are in their hand. So why don't you just always board in that number?
I didn't think about it like that.
That number specifically.
I'll employ that strategy at the next mirror match I play.
You're welcome.
How to break
So the plan is to bring in 0 and then plan on them drawing 0, right? Like,
If that's the number they draw, that's the right number.
Perfect.
Easy fix.
Yep.
That's why I earn the medium bucks.
Yeah, so the mirror, you know, the mirror's tricky, but, you know, there's little things you can do here and there to...
I don't know if I want to listen to your advice on the mirror.
Well, based on my track record, that's probably a good idea, but...
so is there any singular card that's remotely comparable to Birthing Pod in the mirror, or is it really just like there's cards that are better and worse? Like Linvala clearly has a lot of power level, but is there anything that's even close?
Not necessarily an individual card, but just like I was saying before, just a good clock can beat an opposing pod, just because it does. You do have to pay a lot of life to really get it going. So, you know, if you have an early Linvala followed by like a Revelark or something, you know, they can often just be dead sometimes. Or, you know, if you have like if you're on the play especially, and play like maybe a turn 2 voice, turn 3 Finks, you know, off of a bird with the birds in play, and then you have a township. Suddenly, you know, they're like paying 2 life for their pod on turn 3 after they've already paid, you know, 2 life for a couple fetch lands or a shock or something. So they're 16. You're attacking for like 6. You know, if you activate your township, or 7 even if you activate your township, then they're at 9, and then you play a flyer, and they're not really going to have time to get pod going. You know, you can just kill them often. But otherwise, no, there's really not a single card that can really, I mean, except for obviously like Reclamation Sage or something, can 1-for-1 a pod. But, you know, there's nothing really comparable. sometimes court is nice. Oftentimes you can, based on on the situation, you can find a card that does a lot. Obviously, like oftentimes you're just courting for Linvala, but sometimes you'll even take the line where if you are just grinding each other out, you'll court for a witness and then court for either resto or metamorph to copy the witness or blink the witness and then get that court again and then court for something, rebel arc or something. So that can be nice, but yeah. So
in my experience playing against Pod, and I've never played a Pod mirror, but I've played a ton of different brews and quasi-real decks against Pod, and pretty much any time that I can disrupt them by like killing a few creatures and then apply pressure of my own, like if I can kill them before turn 5 or 6 and I can like kill a few of their things, it's felt like easy mode, I guess. That's probably the wrong word, but
yeah, no, those are definitely a lot of the games that you lose with Pod is exactly that. They'll have like against Delver especially, they'll play turn 1 Delver, then they'll flip it and kill your like mana guy, and then you can't catch up, and they'll have like a remand and suddenly you're just dead.
Although I think killing the mana guy is more important than playing the Delver.
Yeah. So,
that's one matchup where play draw is just crucial. Because you can have any time that the Pod player has birds voice of resurgence, if they're on the play, it's like they played birds. It's like, well, I really want to kill that bird and leave up spell snare because I'm going to lose to that friggin' voice.
Yeah.
And there's just like a lot of tension in that matchup on the player draw.
That's your problem, is you're running all these spell snares and all these reactive cards. If your entire deck is like burn and crap, you can just tap out on your turn. It doesn't matter. You'll just kill it. Whatever they play, you'll just kill it. It'll just be dead. Just snapcast everything back. It's amazing. It feels amazing not having to leave up spell snare.
I don't know what burn cards you're playing that I'm not playing. Like maybe like a couple more Electrolyze.
Electrolyze is sweet. Sweet
yeah,
that
one is a sweet one. Yeah, absolutely.
It's expensive though.
It is. Yeah, very expensive. But like just a format defining card, it's actually kind of wild just how good Electrolyze is in Modern.
Yeah,
and how many different archetypes it defines.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like everybody's snapcasting back bolts or snapcasting back Electrolyze and stuff. It almost single-handedly makes me not want to play Lingering Souls in like any of my decks. Even though Lingering Souls like beats Affinity by itself, it's insane. And the green-black X mirrors, like your opponent's just gonna like snapcast back and Electrolyze and like draw 2 cards, killing your things. So why would you? I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. We've recently cut Lingering Souls from our sideboard. For similar reasons, the main reason though, is just because against the Black Rain, it used to be really good against like Juns, but now they have Anger and like they've always had Cage, but now like they just have they're playing a lot of Oozes and they have Cage and they have Anger, so it's just a number of things. But yeah, Lingering Souls is definitely a card I wish saw more play because I love it. But
so something we may or may not have mentioned earlier is you hit Platinum this year, and we've had 2 other people on the show, Craig Wesco and Brad Nelson, and they were both happy to be gold because it is really hard to get gold, and so I can't. It's difficult for me to imagine locking up platinum. How difficult was your year?
It was pretty insane. It was pretty surreal. I had a very very good early year. Like I got second place on one of the first Grand Prix of the season. I won a Grand Prix a few months later, and then I top 16 like the second Pro Tour. So like right away I was basically locked for platinum, or I was 1 point away from being locked from platinum after the second Pro Tour. So it didn't really I didn't quite have that struggle that a lot of people have, like desperately needing points. I did kind of have that struggle for Worlds. Yeah, exactly. I had that struggle for Worlds that I missed, but then the second half of my season was actually fairly poor. Like I didn't get a single extra pro point since Grand Prix Richmond, which was back in March. I just happened to brick all. I didn't necessarily brick the tournaments, but with the GP cap, it's so hard to improve on your finishes. I had a top 32, a couple top 64s, but none of those got me a pro point. And then I broke. I got 101st place in Atlanta, so didn't get a pro point there. And then I did day 2, Portland, so I didn't get a pro point there. So it was not quite what I would imagine. At the beginning of the year, told me I was going to get platinum. It wouldn't quite be as how I would have expected it to be because I didn't have that that feeling of it being a grind. It wasn't really a grind for me. I just kind of in the middle of the year, I was like, oh, I just have a million pro points because I'd gotten had a few really good tournaments.
Well, how nice.
So, but it was like I said, it was pretty surreal. Couldn't
get Wesco and Nelson on here.
You would say that it was very easy for you.
Yeah.
And they both talk about how hard it was to get gold, and you're just like, yeah, that was not difficult. Do you
like
think
I said,
that the lower performance in the second half of the year was a side effect of having already locked up platinum? That if you didn't need the points as much, they became less of an incentive?
I definitely felt a little of that. I don't know how much it actually affected me because I think I was kind of good about like getting over that feeling. But there was definitely a lot of times where I was like, get a moto and I was like, well, I'll just do something else. And I didn't really like it. Whereas I imagine if I knew I was going to miss Worlds by a point, I probably would have put a lot more work in. And so yeah, I guess that's probably true. If at the latter half of the season, I probably would have not necessarily tried a lot harder, but been more vigilant with my work, my work ethic or whatever. So probably definitely had some, contributed to a little bit.
If I were to write a book chronicling this year for you, I would title it Infinite Blossoms, Infinite Regrets.
That deck was sweet.
You have played some very bad decks at the Pro Tour.
You can thank Alexander Hayne for that, but yes. I don't know about bad, but I played some very interesting decks at the Pro Tours.
That would be a weird thank you letter. Dear Alexander Hayne, thank you for making Josh McClain play bad decks at the Pro Tour.
The Infinite Blossoms deck was... I think the deck was, again... To be fair, my opinion may not be that valid because I also think the Mazen deck was actually pretty good if our sideboard would have been a little better. But I think the Infinite Blossoms deck...
For the Black Pro Tour, the Maze's End? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, we played...
That deck was actually just good.
I disagree with you both entirely.
Most of the crap that we get is from that Pro Tour.
That deck looked atrocious. And it wasn't just your group that came playing Maze's End, right? Weren't there like 2 or 3 different play groups that showed up with Maze's End?
There was a Euro group... Rashid top 16, I believe, with the deck. Their list was a lot different. We played the Turbo Fog version, just infinite fogs. We played Aetherize in our fucking Pro Tour deck.
So how many people would you say played Maze's End? Like 40 people in this 400-person tournament, maybe?
I would say probably not that much. There was 10 of us from our team that played it, and I would imagine maybe another 10 would be my guess.
Okay,
but. Yeah, our game one I thought was very good. I won almost all of my game ones. Our sideboard, we didn't really decide to play the deck until like Wednesday night, so we didn't really have much. We only had Thursday to work on our sideboard, and we didn't get nearly as much work as we like. We wanted to play, we were going to play 4 counterflux, but we were convinced that I don't know. We had some discussion, and we eventually decided that the mana wouldn't really work, which is just kind of ludicrous because we have Maze's End, so we'll like always have a red source. But I lost multiple games where my opponent cast an Aether, I cast cancel, they dispelled, I dispelled, they canceled, I canceled, and then they had another counterspell or whatever. Or if I had a counterflux, I would have easily won.
So if that's happening,
what's that?
If that's all happening, why is there even a game 2? Did you play a lot of game 3s in this coach?
Yeah, you were just playing too fast, man. You should just slow down.
Yeah, the deck
read some cards a few times.
It seems like the deck's like a bunch of turbo fogs and you win by getting a million lands in play. It seems like it would take forever, but you don't actually have decisions. Once you get into you have a lot of decisions turns 1 through 6, but then turns 7 through 13, it's just like okay, fog you, activate Maze and go, fog you, activate Maze and go, Rev, activate Maze and go, or whatever. So your turns go very fast. So they didn't actually take that much time. But and the other big thing, so not only was our sideboard bad, we also missed the fact that everybody, all the good teams were playing Nightfall Specters in the sideboard of their Esper deck. So while I think Esper was a good matchup, if they ever hit you with Nightfall Spectre and exile the gate, you just instantly lost the game. Because you only played we played 1 of each gate. So that was kind of...
Yeah, I had a really low opinion of that deck. Although I only played it, but pretty much just because it was my 1 win from that Pro Tour. So I didn't think very highly of it. And when I played that match, I was sitting next to Day 9. And so I was a little bit, I guess starstruck is not the wrong word, but I was, he doesn't stop being Day 9 when he's playing on the Magic the Gathering Pro Tour. He is still 100% that person. It's not like a persona that he puts on. He's just always witty and talking nonstop.
Yeah. But, yeah, I never really played StarCraft, so I've never really watched the show, but I heard a lot of good things about it. He seems like a pretty cool guy.
He actually he's doing a Magic the Gathering show right now. It's targeted at Spellslingers, which we almost named this show Spellslingers Intuition because I was trying to model it after Summoning Insight, which is a League of Legends show. And I just completely forgot the Day 9's show was called Spell Slingers. So when we were discussing alternative names for this show, we considered like Day 9 TV's Happy Hour and like ridiculous things like that.
Well, I mean, you already got Day 1 MTG. They basically just ripped off his name. But, anyways, we were talking about Maze's End. You had bad decks, and
Maze's End and bad decks.
Then like I said, I think the deck was good. Unfortunately, it probably wasn't because we all did really badly. But I think if our sideboard was better, we'd have done a lot better. But I went 4-4 with the deck, so not great. And then I played this Infinite Blossoms deck at this last Pro Tour. And again, I think the deck was actually like fairly good. It's just it was very complicated. It was very, very hard to play well. And I'm much better at decks. I'm surprised. Much better decks than I practice a lot. I'm very bad at just like intuitively knowing the right play. And so I don't think I played very well. I know Sam picked the deck up the day of the tournament, and like I think he 0-4 constructed. Whereas like Alex is just he just I hate to give him a compliment because he's not the most humble person ever, but he is just insanely good at Magic. So like he can just pick up the deck and just play it very well. Like I think he went like 8-2 with it, or maybe 7-3 with it. So like he did very well with it.
He was also high on the deck, right? Like wasn't his influence like part of why you guys all played that?
Yeah. Me and him were really the ones that worked on it the most, and then Sam kind of a little bit towards the end. We actually started working on the deck like 3 weeks before the Pro Tour, but it was just like a straight combo deck with like 4 Kruvix's Insights, no Elspeths or Prognostic Sphinx or anything like that. It's just like you just combo them, made infinite mana, killed them with a Bow of Nelia. But we eventually changed it to more of a mid-range deck that just happened to have this combo in it. The main reason we like the deck is because I think Thassazyre was actually just a very good card. Like I'd say that one of the big defining cards of that format was Prognostic Sphinx, and it was a great answer to Prognostic Sphinx.
What's the card that's the answer to Prognostic Sphinx?
Thassazyre.
Thassazyre, and what does that card do?
It's 1 blue mana for an enchantment, and then it's blue and 3 activated ability, tap or untap target creature. So the combo was you play that and then play Market Festival on a Nykthos, and then have a Kyros follower out or a Voyaging Save that can untap your Nykthos. So you use Nykthos to generate more mana than it would cost to untap your mana creature, and then so you loop that and make it
Market Festival is an enchant land that lets it tap for 2 extra mana. Okay.
Yep. It's whenever enchant land.
We have the full picture for people not experienced with these janky, awful block cards.
So then you'd use Kyros Follower, which is untap target permanent. So you keep untapping that. You usually have like an Eidolon of Blossoms in play, so you could like draw a bunch of cards and eventually draw a Bow of Nylea. And Bow of Nylea, you can tap to put a +1/+1 counter on a creature. So you can use your Kyros Follower to untap your Bow of Nylea and do that infinite time. So you make your Kyros Follower infinitely big, then you tap all their creatures with Thassazyre and attack them for infinite. So
and you gain infinite life. And you put whatever infinite amount of cards on the bottom of your library.
Yep. So
that's a really good draft deck.
I don't think that would be a good draft deck. If you had this combo, like your opponent's probably got some awful piece of removal, or like they're just main decking a disenchant because it's draft,
Yep. But we also just felt like the engine of the Untappers and Market Festival it really let you go over the top of other people, because the deck was all these mid-range decks, so it's like going over the top of your opponent was great. So I think the deck was actually well positioned. It was just it wasn't quite tuned well enough. We should have had more threats. Like we only played like 2 Elspeth and 2 Prognostic Sphinx and like 2 Ajani. So our deck was actually kind of weak to Thoughtseize and these like slower control decks. So we should have just been maxing out on threats and just like playing this mid-range deck, with this, and then happen to have this combo.
I like how each time you're defending these deck choices, you start off saying it was a really good deck, and then you're like, the only change we should have made was like 10 cards. Only like a sixth of the deck was bad. Like the rest of the lands were good. It was a good mana base.
The concept was good.
So I wasn't in the block at all, but my understanding was like just everybody actually had the green-red Elspeth deck. Like that was just a very known quantity. Like what stopped you from just playing the best deck?
We didn't like the 9 matchup against like basically any deck that was not like another like fair creature deck. Like any deck playing Prognostic Sphinx, you felt like we felt like you were a pretty big dog too. Like this band deck, for example, had a great 9 matchup. Like the 9, it was very hard to lose against Nyax. They had all these cards that just did nothing, and you had like Kyros for their Stormbreath Dragons, and like Elspeth you didn't really care that much about Elspeth. It wasn't that impactful. Whereas they had all these lightning strikes and magma jets, which are very bad against Caryatid and coursers. So like we basically just didn't like our other mid range matchups. Like you were great against the aggro decks, but I don't know.
That makes a lot of sense. It seems like Prognostic Sphinx was also very, very popular at this tournament. So it sounds like you made a good decision not playing the deck that lost to Prognostic Sphinx.
Yeah. I mean, obviously people did well with Naya, so the deck was obviously good, but it's just not something that we decided we wanted to do. I mean, a few people. Friedman was on our team. He played Naya. He top 16. So
how was working with Friedman?
What's that?
Ben Friedman. You mentioned him.
Yeah.
How was working with him?
It was good. I like Friedman's one of my absolute favorite people to hang out with. He was great. He unfortunately he had a lot of schoolwork he needed to do, so he was kind of preoccupied with that. So I don't know necessarily. There's a lot of work that got done, but hanging out with Friedman is awesome. He's one of my absolute favorite people. He's just not a real human being. He's crazy.
Your whole team seems like the team of nice guys.
Yeah.
Like a team of maniacs.
And then there's
maniac
Alex.
nice guys. And Alex, nice guys, and Alex is that what the team is?
It seems like every single one of those pro tours, you have Jacob and Alex just going off on their own at some point and doing these troll videos, which are amazing, and I love them, and I think most people do. And then I saw a fitness photo of Friedman squatting somebody else on the team.
It was Jacob.
I have no idea how John manages being around all of you, because John seems like the most level-headed person I've met in a long time.
John's great. John is very level-headed and strict, and when it comes to that stuff. But he's also has a very good sense of humor. He also enjoys that stuff a lot too. So John is just the perfect person ever. He's probably my absolute favorite Magic player. But I don't know. The team's great. I love working with these guys. So we have 3 people who are the opposite of nice guys, and then 3 people who are me, Sam, and John are pretty, we get along with just about everybody. And then you have Jacob, Dave, and Alex who are the recluses.
And Ben donating his tournament winnings to help.
Oh yeah.
Glacium.
Yeah, that was the invitation. That was pretty cool. Yeah,
that's very cool. That's one of the coolest things I've ever heard of a Magic player doing.
I
know
really awesome.
We surprise played for charity at one of the SCG invitationals. A fifth of the prize was donated to charity on Alex B's behalf. But and then there's definitely other charity events that people donate stuff for and whatnot. But usually when you're grinding full time, your mindset becomes very value based, and you only a lot of what you win from a tournament has to go into the next tournament.
Yep.
So it sounds like the face-to-face groups, you guys, your team is pretty tightly knit. Do you think that team is going to continue to be a team on the Pro Tour? Because a lot of these teams, they get together for maybe a year and they disappear. In Minnesota, the team Panic with a K was around for a while, and I wanted to stay around. I wanted that team to stay around forever because it was just the funniest name, and I knew that there were people that were upset every time that they heard it, so that was fun too.
Yeah.
Glacier was on that team, right?
What's that?
So.
David Glacier?
For Montreal.
Yep, yeah. He was a good friend of mine just because he was in the Chicago area. He's probably the first person there that I met. And introduced me to people.
Yeah. Glacier's pretty awesome too. The team was great. The problem was that a lot of the guys just weren't at the end of the year just weren't queued for the next Pro Tour. So
sounds like a very successful team. That's a great team, guys.
Yeah, that was unfortunate. But that, and then I know Shahar and Matt Nass both went over to Channel, so we lost them to Channel. Kyle Stoll wasn't queued, Brandon Nelson wasn't queued. So the team just kind of fell apart, unfortunately. But as far as face-to-face goes, we've been last year at the beginning of the last season. We had talked and we're okay, our goal is to get as many of us to gold as possible, and then try to make it so we were going to recruit people who we think have a good chance of getting gold, just so we can have longevity. The more pro tours you work with people, you get to know them, you work better with them, you trust them a lot, you try everything what they're doing, so we just work better together the more you've known somebody. So and then we had there's like the six like of our like core members that like make all the decisions for the team right now. Five of us are gold plus, so it ended up being a pretty good year. So we'll most likely be working together this whole year. And then we've added a few more people. We added 2 extra people for this Pro Tour, Nathan Holliday and Mike Sigrist. So, and they worked with us for the last Pro Tour as well. So,
congrats on the success of the team. That's awesome. We had Brad Nelson on here last week, and he mentioned you guys because your name came up in regards to scumduggery. But he said those face-to-face guys are, quote, weird. Their interactions with each other are just strange. Would you either confirm that you guys do interact strangely with each other, or would you say that you guys are just like the strangest? So
I think it's just culture shock. I mean, like, Canada is so bizarre. Like, all those flabby hats that just...
I think that it's mostly because Alex and Jacob are very peculiar people. Alex just is always daggering somebody about something, so that just like creates an environment that it seems. I mean, we're very good friends, and we're very so it may seem harsh to outsiders, but like Jacob's like the super huge DJ, and I'm pretty DJ myself too. So people were like shocked when we were like flipping for our appearance fees or whatever. It's a pretty fun time always. So.
I would like it if you all showed up. Well, everybody but you showed up with one of your playmats. And for those who don't know, Josh is attempting to invade Kibler's stranglehold on narcissistic playmats. And I'll put some links up on the YouTube video.
I have a friend who decided it would be a funny idea. It was pretty funny. I'll give him that.
Is it a swimsuit edition? I'll buy one if it's the swimsuit edition.
Eric Rath.
Just like a ridiculous Speedo, like all sprayed out in the Kibler pose.
Oh God. But yeah, so my friend Eric Rath just like ordered this custom playmat online with just like my picture from like Grand Prix Richmond with like a rainbow in the background, and suddenly like somehow Alex Hayne got one, Joe Demestrio got one, Neil Oliver got one. I don't know how they ended up managing to get all these, but it's just ridiculous.
That's amazing.
As far as I know, those are the only people who have them, so hopefully it doesn't spread much further. But
it's gonna spread. It's gonna spread.
I'm telling you, if you're looking for something to do on Saturday of the WMCQ up in Montreal, just set up a booth and sign these and sell them. You will make money.
Unlike many people think, I'm not. A funny story, actually. I went to the WMCQ out in Oakland, and me and Sam were walking around, and we saw Huey there, and Huey came up to us. And he's like, I think we were talking the next day, maybe. He's like, yeah. He's like, I actually thought you guys were Canadian. I was really confused why you were here. Just like.
Well,
we just get lumped in. Our team is like, so there's like the 6 of us, and it's really 4 U.S. players and 2 Canadian players. But then there's Jacob, who's like technically lives in Canada right now. I mean, he's only lived in Canada he grew up in California or whatever, so he's basically American. So our team is more U.S. than it is Canadian. But I guess the face-to-face games is a Canadian store, so we still get lumped in with Canadians. But it's not actually that bad not that bad.
But you personally live where?
I live in Iowa City.
Okay. All right.
So quite a ways away from Canada.
Yes, that is a ways.
Do you have any other really good face-to-face stories that the public wouldn't know?
And needs to know. This is where the dirt gets spilled.
Alex is just an insane human being. There's so many ridiculous things that he just stupid ways to troll people. I can't remember. There's one time he went around our house with a cockroach in a Starbucks cup just because I'm a little afraid of bugs. So every time I was was sitting there, he just come up with this Starbucks cup with a cockroach in it. Just it was so ridiculous. Who actually does this stuff? But I don't know.
A bug in the cup. That's the best you got. I want to know where the bodies are buried.
There's a pretty funny story that it was the TCG or not TCG, the Star City Games Invitation rather in Columbus. It was me and Jacob where we were just it had been a pretty bad weekend for me for coin flips. I had paid $400 to play National Geo Opens because I ended up paying for 10 other people from flipping for entries, and then I just lost infinite flips to Jacob for flip for this here, that here. So eventually we decided to flip for my foil Burling Pod deck, which is not all the fetches weren't foil, and the couple other things weren't foil, but it was probably 75% foil.
If you win the flip, does he have to buy all the same copies of the card and get you that, or
no, it was
the monetary value?
Flip, he we were gonna add up all the cards on Star City, the median of the buy price and the sell price, and he was gonna give me that. So we didn't actually have to do that because I immediately lost the flip and lost the $5. But so that got pretty bad. But
That sounds
then I
brutal.
culminated in us flipping for our appearance fees for Pro Tour Hawaii, and I won that from him. So that kind of offset losing my my pod deck.
I don't think that does. I don't think that offsets that at all.
I think we added up. The pod deck was about 2,500, and the appearance fee is 3K. So I got him.
Never mind. Never mind.
Well, how much does second place pay?
It's like, what do you mean? Oh,
Well, like, are you just for the appearance fee, or do you also get his
just
winnings?
the appearance fee. No, just the appearance fee.
Oh, okay.
Flipping for winning, that wouldn't make any sense to flip for winnings at the start of a tournament because then the other person would just tank.
Yeah, exactly. There was a tournament where me and Jacob swapped like 90% of ourselves. So like I had 90% of him and he had 90% of me. So
That's
that was.
amazing.
Unfortunately, we both tanked it, but not on purpose. At least hopefully he didn't take it on purpose. So
I used to always split with Ryan Rowland, and we'd always be at the same record. We'd be like 6-1 or something, or 7-1 or whatever, and then he'd immediately tank right after we split until the point, like I almost thought it was intentional, where he was just like, well, I made my entry fee back because Caleb's going to cash. I'm going to go get a soda or something. Like I actually think that was his legitimate game plan with how consistent it was. It could be a mental thing. I've also heard that that's just bunk. The whole like that people like place too much importance on like a mental game when it comes to sports and games in general, because it doesn't actually matter if you're like afraid or nervous. If you're, say, boxing someone and punching them in the face, all that really matters is that you punch them in the face real good.
I've kind of always thought the same way. You know, I never don't really put too much weight on, like I said, whether, like pressure of like playing well or whatever. Like I just, you just play Magic, and you're gonna do what you're gonna do. Like I don't know. I
found that's true too. No matter my state of mind, there's always the same outcome in a Magic tournament when I punch somebody in the face. The same thing. The same thing always happens.
Yep.
Definitely compared some standard formats to just like putting $1 into a machine so it kicks you in the nuts and just do that over and over.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely something to be said for like thinking about like stuff while you're playing a game, because like you can only like you can only process so many things at once. So you don't want to be thinking about like I split. Like if you're thinking about like the split while you're playing, then like maybe that would affect you, like your mental game or whatever. If you're thinking about like people often talk about like thinking about I gotta win. I think Brad actually just wrote an article about it, but like I gotta win the next X round of the tournament to make top 8, where then suddenly you forget like a really important part of the game or whatever. Where that like might be true, but as long as you just like block all that stuff out while you're playing, I don't think it really matters that much. So.
Yeah, I think that part, it also kind of depends how that mental state impacts your composure. I think that's the most relevant factor there. Because, like, if you're feeling kind of crummy or whatever, like you're getting hung up on something negative, then you might react more to some hidden information that's not going your way to your opponent.
Sure. Yeah, that's reasonable. It's your general state of mind during the match.
I would even say too reasonable.
Yeah.
Where is Ryan Overturf, and why hasn't he been drinking?
Is that guy still winning? That seems unlikely.
So when is the next big tournament you guys are playing in? So all skipping the WMCQ.
Did we talk about the Vintage Championships that's coming up? Did we actually get that on this cast? Or did we talk that during the...
Yeah. That was definitely the recording.
That was definitely the recording. I'm glad that we have to like check now, because we have right now we have roughly about an hour of recorded footage and an hour of us actually like doing this like a very similar conversation that's running along at the same time while we have all these technical difficulties, because there's just been so many of them. It's actually been absurd.
As long as we get the video done in the end,
it's all blurring together.
Yeah. But Exile is the next, I think. I assume, are any of you guys going to Salt Lake City in 2 weeks?
Salt Lake City, what's the format of that GP?
It is M15 sealed.
Definitely not. I actually do pretty well at limited GPs. I just haven't played that format really, the M15 yet. I don't particularly want to. Like, I played one draft and I lost to a couple 2-2 intimidators. And I was like,
sure.
It's enough of
this. Support for the French crate. Yeah, I actually really like this draft format. I've had a lot of fun with it, but I like most draft formats. I'm not too picky.
So my plan was to not play any standard between the printings of Magic 2015 and Khans of Tarkir. So I just had nothing going on for that format. And then the timing just worked out. So the Mox is back just in time for a season that I got 35 QPs in to be that standard format. So I have to get ready for like the season 2 or 3 championship, which is that. I think that's sometime next month.
Oh, yeah.
I'll probably just play mono black. I mean,
yeah, that's definitely the safest choice.
That sounds miserable. Why don't you just, like, I don't know, hit yourself in the junk with an encyclopedia or something? It's mono black.
The problem is like I was playing like this pretty sweet red devotion list, and I felt really good about the deck's position and the metagame, like how I had built it. Like I don't feel good about most of the red devotion lists I see, but I actually liked my deck. But anyway, I sold my Stormbreath Dragons to draft Vintage Masters.
That format has been the bane of many collections.
Yeah. So I'm not about to buy back into that.
Yeah.
I could probably lend you dragons. Now that this is a time for that conversation. I'm roommates with Joey Mispegel, and he had an interesting idea for Red Devotion where you use Burning Tree Emissary to fix for green. You play Rabblemaster, and then you can play Chord of Calling. Because it's a new reprint.
It's all about these Rabblemaster Chord decks.
Right. Well, I mean, this way you just get to have pretty much whenever you play that deck, you always win whenever you play 2 Fanatic of Mogus. You just win if you get to resolve 2 of that card. And so if you get to play like some number of chords, you're just increasing the consistency of the deck, which is the bane of the deck is that it's very inconsistent. So if you can fix that by you're adding your second color.
I've had fewer problems with consistency. Like it seems to me that most of the time you're losing when they just kill everything, and I think that Chord makes that weakness a lot more gaping. Like because you have just like this really inefficient creature spell at that point in time.
Rabblemaster might help that though.
Rabblemaster helps. He seems like a good sideboard card because then you just have more things that can singularly beat down against the control decks.
A lot of your cards that would normally be clunky in the face of piles of removal, like the Red God, you could go down to just 1 copy of the Red God because then it becomes a Chord target.
I actually really, really hate the Red God in that deck.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, I'm really against that card.
Card gets a lot better with Rabblemaster though.
Yeah, well, because like I was saying, like the worst games are when your opponent is just casting removal spells. Like I feel like you actually go bigger than any deck in the format, almost strictly on account of Fanatic of Mogis. Like they're casting 1,000 green creatures, like the Green Devotion matchup. They're just going crazy, and you're just like, all right, I'll dome you for 12 game 2. Yeah. And so like when they're just killing your stuff, then your Perforos is never on. It's maybe shocking them, but the decks that are killing your stuff, they either have Sphinx's Revelation, so shocking doesn't really matter a ton, and those decks also have Detention Sphere for your God if it does matter, and then Desecration Demon is just so much faster than shock. I don't know. Like I was really underwhelmed with the card.
That makes a lot of sense.
I haven't played any Red Devotion, so I'll take your word for it. It seemed reasonable.
Yeah. And like the cutest interaction is when you have Assemble a Legion and Perforos, but how are you losing when you have Assemble a Legion? What are you doing? Are you missing triggers? Like what is happening?
If you're missing triggers, then you're not shocking anyways.
That's true. That's true.
But if you did mention Sphinx's Revelation, I mean, you could be doing a pile of damage with these 2 cards.
That's true. It's absolutely true.
I'm kind of going to be curious to see how much the Mox finals, or not the, the event that is this Saturday, how different it's going to be than, like, a daily event metagame. Like, normally you see an awful lot of mono-red in those queues. I'm kind of wondering how much there's going to be in the event this Saturday.
You're talking about the WMCQ?
Or no, the Mox.
This Saturday is the Vintage Championship.
No, the Mox is running at the same time.
Oh, is it the Mox? Oh, okay, Season 2. Okay.
There's a lot of stuff going on Magic Online this weekend.
Yeah, LSV was
like
actually...
really... Oh, yeah, they're happening at the same time. That's messed up.
LSV was actually tweeting about that. He's like, what kind of idiot put the Vintage Championships at the same time as the Mox? And then, like, 15 minutes later, he tweeted, actually, this is way better for me because I can just dual queue them. I'm like...
Except... now there's 2 giant events trying to run on the system that they've had trouble running 1 giant event forever now. So.
Yeah, but
well,
the good
neither
news
event should be
is,
that big,
right? Yeah, neither of these
in terms
events
of
are
like
actually giant.
attendance.
Sure,
Like
sure,
a
sure.
But in terms of
50-person
like
vintage
payout,
tournament.
it's gigantic.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
What is the format
Both
for the
of those
Mox
are
this
on
weekend?
Saturday.
Standard.
Standard, okay.
I should just try to queue for both of those and just bring my laptop for Saturday.
A lot of
Seems
people are
insane.
definitely scared to play red decks in those kinds of tournaments. I don't really know why. I mean, if that's what you're prepared with, that's really what you should game with, right?
Mhm.
That's just how I feel about it. But you definitely see less red decks, at least in the later rounds in those kinds of tournaments.
Yeah.
What was the question that brought up red decks?
Dave was just wondering, like, how the metagame at like the Mox Championship for Standard is going to compare to like daily event results, or like what you're going to see in 8-mans,
Okay.
and just how popular red decks are going to be.
I mean, 8-mans, I can definitely see a discrepancy because like
Yeah.
that's just pissing away 6 tickets and 2
Yeah.
hours.
Yeah, and like the red deck is the best deck to multi-queue with, but like if you're multi-queuing during the Mox, you're probably not taking it as seriously as your opponent.
Unless you want to win vintage.
Yeah.
Yeah, the vintage tournament. God, that is just the sickest freaking EV. The play sets go down to fourth place. Fourth place gets a play set of vintage.
Then if you get
masters.
fifth
That's,
through
that's
eighth,
a couple
you get
grand, right?
15 packs.
Like a set of power is $1,000, and then like all the other stuff added up has to be like
that's insane.
Do you know how many people are qualified for that
Yeah,
tournament?
there's like 50 right now.
Like 50?
Yeah.
Jesus.
That's
Yeah.
insane.
And prize goes down to 124 players. So how about that?
Jeez.
I'm giddy for some reason. I don't know. Yeah, I've been testing.
Yeah.
I've been playing survival in vintage lately. I'm not sure
Surprise.
if I'm going to play it in the tournament because like I just put out a video with it and I've been streaming with it and stuff. So like everybody knows that I'm going to be playing survival, but I'm not sure if it matters. Like most of the matchups that are my good matchups, it just doesn't matter at all if they know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Because it's not like there's any specific hate. Like no one's playing Cabal Therapy except for Dredge, and you beat those with your hate. So
Yeah, I really can't think of anything that's like super relevant that people would do in vintage specifically to beat your deck. Like it
Maybe
seems like a waste of a slot,
right,
really.
yeah, maybe they tick up their Jace and don't have it get eaten by a Vengevine. But if they're taking up their Jace, then I'm going to eat it with the Vengevine in the second attack anyway. Like, it doesn't really matter. That happens a lot. Everybody goes like Jace, or like, because if you tick up Dak Fade into 4 or just Brainstorm with a Jace, it's like it's the same turn that I would be just hard casting a Vengevine if I don't have a survival. It's the most convenient thing ever because then I still have a threat and they have nothing, and very easy to win from that position.
Yeah.
Are you playing a Wonder yet?
Man. I'm not playing a Wonder. I think I'm going to start adding Yixlid Jailer, though, that Ryan Overturf suggested. I don't know why I haven't had one. There's like a Scavenging Ooze in my sideboard right now, which makes no sense because I have black mana and Yixlid Jailer is just way better.
And you're playing survival, so you always have it.
Well, you don't always have it. Like, going survival, activate, cast 2-drop against Dredge seems a little ambitious.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm also running the Fairy Macabre. Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. Vintage. How much have we talked about vintage on this? A lot.
Not nearly enough.
Not nearly enough. God, I love that format. The format becomes a lot sweeter when like half the people you're playing against just die to some hasty 4/3s, though. Survival is such a fun deck to play. And then every once in a while, my opponent just like turn one tinkers me and gets a Blightsteel Colossus, and I'm like, come on, that's not fair. You're supposed to give me one more turn so I can kill you with my 4/3s. What are you doing? I thought we had an unwritten agreement. Tinker targets have gotten a lot better over the years. I remember when getting like a Darksteel Colossus was considered insane. Like, I'll kill you with this eventually.
Not so much anymore.
It's just not a card.
Yeah.
I remember when Blightsteel was first printed, and Martin Juza like thought that it had the same casting cost as Darksteel Colossus, and played it with 11 mana. And then the judge wouldn't let them rewind and put the Darksteel Colossus, the Blightsteel in his hand because a turn had passed when they noticed it. And so he just didn't attack with the Blightsteel Colossus until a turn after he had 12 mana.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Pretty cool.
Sorry, Ryan, you were going to say something? I think I cut you off.
I've been messing around with Mere Battlesphere as my Tinker target. I was saying I don't think we were recording at this point in time, but there's actually been a lot of live vintage tournaments in Minnesota. The funny thing about allowing unlimited proxies in a format with like some allure is like people will just show up if you host them. And like Mere Battlesphere is kind of interesting because like it's way better against Jace than the other targets that aren't Inkwell Leviathan anyway. And like if the Hercos recall it, a lot of times Mere Battlesphere is eminently castable. Like 7 is like not completely unreasonable.
Yeah, if you have a Mana Drain or a Mana Vault, it's like it's already cast, or an Academy or something. Like it's very castable. I 100% agree. I've also been playing it a lot in decks that are running like Skull Clamp. Like if I have like Young Pyromancer going in Skull Clamp, then getting a Mere Battlesphere and drawing 6 cards or something, I'm probably going to have a Force of Will to protect my Mere Battlesphere. Whereas if I got a Blightsteel Colossus, I'd be like, all right, pass the turn. Hope you don't kill me with whatever. Blightsteel's just the better turn 1 play.
Yeah. They're just dead if they don't have anything. So
you want to flip some coins, which is the Josh McClain MO, right? Flipping coins, flipping for decks, flipping for appearance fees.
I also lost my mono blue deck to Jacob at GP Chicago.
Jesus, how many decks do you lose just flipping coins with your friends?
Only 2 right now.
Have you ever had to borrow the deck back after like losing it in a flip off? Like, do you flip before tournaments or after?
Usually after.
It seems like it'd be way more serious if you flipped for decks like 5 minutes before a tournament starts.
We joked around about doing that for GP Boston. He was like, I posted on like Facebook or something, like, you know, wanting to borrow a pod deck, and he said, I'll flip you for my deck. I'm like, okay, but the loser, whoever loses, has to play 8 rack.
Oh my god.
That would have been a great flip.
Nice entry fee.
So.
I wonder what the deck tech would be like, where they ask you, why are you playing this deck?
Yeah. Well, I called head.
Well, I'm an idiot.
So you're 4-0 in this tournament. How do you feel? Well, like I've gotten really lucky. So why are you playing this deck? Well, I got really unlucky.
It's got to balance out, right? There has to be balance in the force.
Man, that's the perfect reason to do this with then.
So let's talk about standards that are more formats that are more relevant to Josh McClain. Like, how excited are you for Standard to rotate?
Pretty excited. I like that the Pro Tours will all be, you know, a bit shaken up now, because they'll basically rotate every other Pro Tour now instead of, you know, one set of every 4 or whatever it used to be. So I'm pretty excited for that. It should be awesome. Otherwise, you know, I like the change. The change seems pretty sweet. I don't know much else to say about it than
that change you were mentioning, how they basically cut out the core sets and like broke everything down into 2 set blocks. I kind of wonder why they're only keeping it 6 sets in a standard format, because with playing with the 2 core sets, you would have 8, and so it seems like the full block would be less dense because you'd have fewer cards. Because the core sets have been adding original cards lately.
Yeah. That's really like about 7 sets, right? Because I think the core sets are like half reprints, right?
Right. But I mean, that's a difference, right? 7 sets and 6 sets. That's huge when you're.
This is kind of how I feel about it. It's going to be fewer sets, but there's also going to be more mechanics with specific things catered to them. Where like currently, even though there's 8 sets, 2 of those sets are contributing maybe 5 cards, right?
Yeah.
Like core sets aren't super impactful on standard. Like they're the most impactful on standard of anything, but even then, how many cards are they really adding?
You just need Rabble Master, man. They could print it as like as a promo, and I'd be happy. It's like one set, 1 card set.
You gotta feel your chords.
Yeah, dude.
I do think that it's gonna be more difficult to have those generically powerful cards in standard though, because like Rabble Master, it doesn't really make sense in a set without a goblin theme. Like you can put anything in a core set as long as it's bland enough. But
Speaking of goblins though, they're doing Morph, and that was those were both onslaught block. So
true.
Maybe they'll bring back goblins. Rabble Master just delete him.
If I could play Rabble Master and Goblin Chieftain in the same standard format, I would actually be pretty happy.
Jeez.
That
would be pretty absurd.
Right? That'd be very absurd.
That would be a very.
And we have Frenzied Goblin right now too. That's a good one.
That's the one where it can't tap if you pay a mana when it attacks, right?
Yep, can't block.
Yeah.
And good old Founder Street Denizen is a solid man.
I think you meant to say bad new.
I love Founder Street Dynamism.
You have interesting loves, sir.
And mostly in draft.
Oh, okay, that sounds way better.
I loved like yeah. I've had a few draft decks that had 5 or 6 of that guy. And those are pretty good draft decks.
My sweetest draft decks all involve multiple of that card and Obelisk of Erd. Always.
That sounds retarded.
Yeah, that's very sweet. I think he's like a Goblin Warrior, and then there's the Berserker guy that's a 1/2 that gets +2/+1 attacks. He's also a Warrior. And then Krenko's Enforcer's a Warrior. So like there's a Warrior theme, a Goblin theme, maybe a Human theme. Just so many options.
Yeah, you name with Obelisk, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't cast this card. That's how much Standard I've played lately.
I really like it in Limited.
Even if you play a lot of Standard, you're not casting.
Yeah.
Even if you play a lot of Standard, you're probably not casting Obelisk of Erd.
Yeah.
Unless you're Craig Wesco.
The crazy red-white token deck.
Yeah.
Red-white tokens?
This, red-white soldiers, like launch the fleet deck that
launch the fleet.
Alex Sittner and Oscar Jones played at the PT. Oscar came up to me before the tournament and was like, he was like talking to our whole guys. I got the best deck in the room, not close. I'll give anybody even odds that I 9-1 or better with this deck. Obviously, everybody just like laughed at him.
Even odds.
I think he went 2-8.
I would definitely be doing something other than laughing. I'd be taking his money.
Well, of course we don't bet on sanctioned Magic, so.
Yeah.
That's fair. No one would want to break the rules.
That's probably the first thing that you told him. We don't do
so
that.
He actually like 6 of the draft too.
He probably never even heard that rule before, and you guys informed him, and it changed his whole outlook.
Yeah. So, but so that deck plays like 4 Obelisk in it, but otherwise, you're probably not casting that card often. But, other than Standard, there's not really any, before the next Pro Tour, there's only one more Grand Prix. It's crazy because we just had a Pro Tour, but it's like Grand Prix Salt Lake City, and that's it.
Yeah.
There's 2 North American GPs in between the 2 Pro Tours. It was Portland and then this. It's pretty.
Did you play Portland?
I didn't know. I had to come back. I had to move out of my apartment, so I had to deal with all that. And I had been on the road for a couple weeks, so I just wanted a break. I didn't realize how insane the Pro Point payout was for team tournaments now with the new system. I wish I would not have skipped it. Top, I think, or 12 teams or better. I think there was 12 teams that got 3 Pro Points. So that's 36 people that got 3 Pro Points, and then at the 1,500 man GP on the same weekend, there was only 8 people. Only the top 8 got 3 or more Pro Points. It's ridiculous.
That is nuts.
Yeah, team tournaments are insane for Pro Points. So
I think the reason that is because there's no buys.
Yeah,
so
that's what they were saying.
Weight it heavier.
Yep, but I still think they're a little too heavily weighted. But, oh well.
Well, I mean, they're adjusting them, right? I remember.
Yeah. Hopefully, I really hope they look at the numbers for the. I mean, it's all their math. They want to have about 30 platinums at the end of the year. So whatever's going to get them there, that's what they're going to do. So I'm hoping this math is wrong, because right now it seems so hard to get reasonable points from GPs. You basically have to top 8 multiple GPs for them to count, because if you don't top 8, you're likely only going to get 2 points. You have to X2 to get 3 points. It's pretty hard to X2 a GP.
It's coming from the guy who just top 8'd 2 Grand Prix last season. This is an impossible feat. I don't know how they can expect us to do that thing that I just did.
Sure, I definitely had a really good year last year, but like I was saying, to try to repeat that, it's going to be absurdly difficult. There's almost no way I'll be able to. And now, without being able to get 3 points from top 6 teams, I'm going to basically have to have multiple very good Pro Tours or one insane Pro Tour.
Yeah, I've heard a lot. Like I said, Wesco and Brad Nelson were both on here talking about gold and being happy to be gold, which is an amazing feat. And then there's Matt Costa in PV, Matt Costa's PTQing because he's fallen off. That's ridiculous.
Yep.
These are amazing players, and you have one bad season and you're back to PTQing.
Yep. Shields is back to PTQing as well.
Another amazing player.
Yep. Although I think Costa had to skip a Pro Tour, which sucks.
That does suck. The first interaction I ever had with Costa, I didn't really know him, and I was looking at this list of names that I had to play in this pod of people, and I was thinking if I recognized any of them, And he came up to me and he's just like, all right, this person's playing this person's playing that, this person's playing this, like, good luck with your rounds. And he just walks away, and I'm just like, who is this magical person that just, like, descended from the heavens and gave me this information? So
that's definitely pretty awesome.
I have had a high opinion of him ever since.
Yeah.
The first time I ever played David Shields, I played him in the top 8 of an Open, and they just game lost him for misregging. And 2 months previous, the rules for misregging were different, and at a judge's discretion, they could downgrade it. They've changed this rule like 4 or 5 times. And the exact same thing had happened to me. And I'd written down an extra land instead of a Vampire Lacerator, and I top 8'd, and they were like, Vampire Lacerator is like the best card in your zombie deck, right? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, why did you misreg? And I was like, oh, I was really tired and I was filling it out. I miscounted my lands or something. And I'm like, okay, well, no game loss for you. And I just,
jeez.
And I like tell him this story as he's tilting over his game loss.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a really good player. I remember I've only played against him once. It was in the finals of a draft open, and my deck was terrible. It was actually the first time I drafted Avacyn Restored. Like I didn't really even know what was in the set, and everyone's deck in the top 8 was just bad. And I played against him in the finals, and thank God he agreed to the split. Because like his deck had Tameo and Druid's Familiar. I think that's the name of that insane Soul Bond uncommon.
The 4-mana 2/2. Yeah.
I might have won the match if he continued to not draw Tameo and play around cards that I did not have in my deck. Like, he gave me way too much credit, and that's the only way that he could have lost. But like he played super well, like because he played around things that could have got him if I had them.
Yeah, a lot of people hated that limited format. I think because there were never quite enough playables in your deck. And so like you almost always ended up with a deck with like 20 playables or 18 playables, like cards that you can consider good, and then some filler. And so I ended up, like, a lot of my better decks had like 1-mana 1/1s in them, just because there were so many cards in the format that could augment a creature's attributes, like its power and stuff. Like if you get something fire breathing, doesn't matter that it's a 1-mana 1/1. Like now it's a serious threat. And I ended up having like a really strong record in that format, just because I think I caught on to that pretty quickly.
Was Wingcrafter a 1-drop?
It was, yeah.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite ones. That and like Tandem Lookout.
I
also was a big fan of Abundant Growth. Yeah. I actually thought Abundant Growth was great. That was actually one of my highest win percentage limited formats, and I actually loved it. I love underpowered formats.
I agree.
Yeah.
That's probably why all the decks in your top 8 seem bad.
They were actually bad for the format too, though.
Which you cleverly deduced from your one time playing this format.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised that you top 8 at the draft open playing your first time with a bad deck, though.
Well, here's how I top 8. Nobody in my draft pod was in blue. I just got actually every good blue card that was opened. And I was playing 2 Radiant Fountains in my deck because they gave me more value off of my Ghostly Flickers.
Radiant Fountain is what?
It's a land that taps for colorless and gains a life when you play it or play an angel.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Ghostly Flickers lets you blink 2 permanents, so you could gain an extra life.
Yeah.
That value, man. How can you say no to that value? Yeah. You had no angels in your deck?
Value. No, it was a blue deck. What angel can I possibly have?
Yeah.
This was a discussion I actually had with you at the TCG Player, Josh. I think that the reinstatement of the Modern Pro Tour, and this isn't just me wildly speculated, like this is based on things like Tom Lapelli have said, that the reinstatement of the Modern Pro Tour puts more pressure on the ban list. And personally, I see Birthing Pod and the Snapcaster Mage are like the most likely cards to get banned if we need more bans. But you said you were very comfortable with Pod not being banned. Like you don't think that it's going to happen.
Yeah, I'd be really surprised if it got banned right now. It hasn't really put up the numbers that most decks that have a card banned do like really really well like the previous 6 months or whatever. But it really hasn't put up it didn't top. Well, to be fair, nobody outside of North America plays Birthing Pod for some reason, but it didn't top 8. It didn't put a single copy in the top 32 of the last Modern GP out in Kobe. There wasn't a single copy in the top 8 of Grand Prix Boston. It's a little misleading because two of the guys on our team, Jacob and Nathan, both X2'd the tournament, and if the tiebreaker system actually worked, they would have been in the top 8. So it sucks for that. But as far as Burning Pot getting banned, it looks like there's none in the top 8, so it's not that big of a deal. But so it just hasn't actually the deck hasn't actually done that well recently. Even though I think the deck's amazing, obviously, and it's great, but I'd be really surprised if it got banned. It's also like the magic that Wizards likes. Like there's a lot of creature interaction. There's a lot of it's like there's a lot of combat. There's a lot of just playing Magic, which is what they want.
Sure.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
Yeah. I wouldn't. I would say there's a way better chance. I think Snapcaster Mage gets banned. I don't think Snapcaster will get banned, but if one of the two were to get banned, I would say it's much more likely to be Snapcaster.
Forsyth did list the reasons for the cantrips being banned, as not because they're like a brutal combo enabler, but just because blue is overpowered in the format. So that's why Ponder and Preordain are banned, because they don't want everybody to be playing blue cards. And right now, I think Snapcaster Mage is the main reason that everybody's playing blue cards. And I think with Bloodbraid Elf on the banned list, I think they're starting to realize that was probably not correct, that like Deathrite Shaman was the real problem card there. And so I could see possibly Bloodbraid Elf coming off. But it is a value card, and there is precedent for banning value cards in Modern because of it.
I would be very, very surprised if, not very, very surprised, but I would definitely be surprised if in, a year from now, Bloodbraid Elf was still banned. Like, I don't think that card is very impressive, and I think they would be fine in banning it, but... Much,
kind of lackluster in comparison to Snapcaster Mage. Like, one of them is instant, one of them takes one color in the cost,
in a heads up comparison though, like if you're playing Snapcaster against Bloodbraid Elf, a lot of times the Bloodbraid Elf is worth more, like specifically in that matchup, but like abstractly I think that Snapcaster Mage is more powerful.
Sure. Isn't even though it's like Snapcaster can trade with the Bloodbraid Elf and then answer profitably anything else they do.
You can't always answer profitably though. Like if they Snapcaster and or if they Bloodbraid into like Liliana or Kitchen Finks, like it can be an awkward proposition.
It's Snapcaster remand it.
Yeah.
Right, that sucks.
Idiot.
Yeah.
Sometimes it happens that your opponent's on the play with Bloodbraid Elf. And sometimes they cast it on turn 4.
Yeah. I mean, you can always just Snapcaster or whatever. Yeah, sometimes it definitely does. But just I think also the fact that on turn 12 when you draw Snapcaster, you have a plethora of options. Whereas when you draw Bloodbraid, you just we'll see what we get here. Or Snapcaster, you should have way more control over what you're going to get.
I think
Snapcaster tends to be better on an open board.
Yeah.
That's also probably why Bloodbraid Elf was banned before Snapcaster. It's because when you're facing a Bloodbraid Elf and they Bloodbraid Elf cascaded to this card specifically that destroys you, and they it doesn't register in their eyes that it's the one card they could have hit to wreck you or whatever, and you're just looking at the board. You can you had a 5.8% chance of hitting that that one of in your sideboard that and whereas with a Snapcaster they had full knowledge of their graveyard. This is an active decision that they had to either screw up or not. Even the timing that you cast Snapcaster Mage is pretty big.
Yeah,
does different things in different matchups. Bloodbraid Elf kind of does the same thing. Kind of.
Yeah.
I guess there's a little bit of something in when it was in Standard, it was a big thing to not cast it into an empty board in case you hit a removal spell, because then you're just wasting that value.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And to make sure that you pray that there's no putrid leeches in the top 5 cards of your deck.
So you said that you would be surprised if Bloodbraid Elf was still on the banned list. Would you be surprised if Snapcaster Mage wasn't on the banned list?
Not necessarily, no. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't really be surprised either way with that card. I could honestly say going either way.
I think Remand would become much less. Remand and Electrolyze both would become a lot less omnipresent without Snapcaster Mage in the format.
I think I agree. Yeah. I think Electrolyze would still be played a little bit, but I definitely think Remand would go down a lot. At least in Twin, I think Scapeshift would probably still play it. Scapeshift would definitely still play it. But yeah, the Twin decks, I don't think Remand would be nearly as good.
If they did ban Snapcaster, do you think that would be enough for them to unban Preordain?
I don't know. I would be very wary of letting Preordain free. It just allows. It's just such an absurdly efficient. Just so efficient and so good at what it does But it might be worth a try. I wouldn't be upset if they unbanned it.
Josh McClain.
Speaking of unbannings, besides Bloodbraid Elf,
I'm playing green cards, so I got to be wary of those blue cards. But sorry.
Other than Bloodbraid Elf, like, do you think that there's any cards on the modern ban list that are likely to be unbanned? Like, I think that there's a handful of cards that it's pretty reasonable that could just come off the ban list, especially after Bitter Blossom, like a card that was speculated to be one of the more potentially oppressive cards on the ban list, got unbanned and then proceeded to see essentially zero play.
Except when it keeps Skogen from winning a PTQ, in which case...
It wasn't even that card, though. It was more just bad play, but whatever.
Yeah. There's definitely a few I could see being unbanned. I think I actually don't think Jace would be that oppressive, to be honest. I think Jace, especially if they unbanned Bloodbraid Elf. But then I think they would also have to ban Snapcaster though. But
okay, I actually like that a lot. Ban Snapcaster, unban Jace. I think that would make a lot of sense.
I think that would be reasonable
because sorcery speed interaction in Modern is so much more lackluster. When if you tap out, your opponent might just kill you with a pot activation or a Splinter Twin, like all the combo decks. You need to hold up mana to stop. So Jace becomes, I think, way worse. And then the decks where you're not trying to lock them out with Jace. I don't even necessarily think it's that good of a card. Like obviously it'd be good against like Tron, like with like Wormcoil engines and stuff, but it's not going to be a card against Affinity. Like you're not going to cast this 4-mana thing and bounce an Ornithopter.
Jeez, I might rather have Jace Archetype of Thought against Affinity.
Actually, Jace, we tested that. That's actually pretty good. I don't know if you were saying that jokingly, but that's one of the matchups that's made me consider Architect of Thought in Modern.
Yeah.
It's not actually that bad.
Well, I don't want them.
It's like 90%
I'm not so
good
sure
enough.
about that.
I've considered the card as well. I was looking for something that cost 4 mana that would be worth more than a card against the rock decks. Yep. And that was one of the cards on my short list.
Did you test Gifts Ungiven?
What do you gifts for in a Delver deck?
Snapcaster Mage? Blood Moon?
Well, yeah, obviously.
Get right, Celestnorn.
Wait, which Delver deck are you playing? The second Gifts Ungiven?
So you gifts for gifts, Snapcaster Mage, Blood Moon, Magus of the Moon.
No, probably Batterskull over Magus of the Moon. I don't think Magus is that playable.
Yeah,
Just too many lightning bolts. I've had Magus bolted way too many times to ever consider that a card.
My favorite thing was red capping Magus back in Standard Fairies. That was awesome.
I lost to a red cap out of Pod when he could not have cast it before I played Blood Moon, and then I played Blood Moon, and he's like, red cap, you're Delver, and I was just like, oh, alright. That happened, I guess.
So, here's an interesting question. How good would Stoneforge Mystic be in Modern right now?
I think it would be very...
I tested this. I tested this in the ban series. It was it was quite good.
I imagine it would be
I don't think it would be dominant, like the decks that couldn't or didn't want to play Stoneforge Mystic wouldn't necessarily become not viable because of its presence. It doesn't actually force out that many decks. Like there's so many answers to random equipments that everybody's already main decking because like for example, Pod wants Pride Mage. So like what good is like getting a sword and putting it on it or whatever, like anyway. But the real oppressiveness of the card, I think, is that it is good enough, that the value is good enough in Modern that it would force basically any deck that could play it to play it. Yeah. So it would just eat up 6 slots in everybody's list, which is one of the reasons that they banned Green Sun Zenith, is that they wanted there to be more diversity in the green decks.
Yeah. I would certainly love potting my bird into a Stoneforge Mystic. That sounds pretty sweet.
Yeah, it sounds amazing.
It's too bad you couldn't pot into Batterskull.
Yeah. Well, you pot into Stoneforge Mystic, and actually you can activate Stoneforge and then pot away your Stoneforge. Works out perfectly.
There's the 5-mana Stoneforge Mystic. You're talking about potting into Batterskull? Yeah, dude. Pot into Batterskull, just pot into this guy. Pot into Godo, why not? Godo puts it into play, right? 6 mana?
It does, yeah.
Pot away your Lark, get Godo, get Batterskull. Can't lose.
You can even rebuy Godo with Lark.
Can you? I thought Godo was a 3/3.
Godo's a 3/3, but you can get back to Stoneforge Mystic.
Never mind. There you go. I thought Godo was too paced for some reason.
Too bad there's nothing that like adjusts creatures' size while they're like in your graveyard. Like Painter's Servant changes cards' colors like all throughout the thing. If there could be a card that like changes all creatures, whether they're in play or not. Yeah, or like or all creatures' casting costs, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
It could be interesting. Although like after seeing the effects of Painter's Servant, especially with cards that they didn't even necessarily consider, maybe it's not a good idea that they have those cards.
After seeing Painter's Servant on Moto, I don't want to see anything like that ever again.
My favorite.
Have you?
I'm sorry. My favorite Painter's Servant story is Chris Anderson is playing 12 post in some format or other. I think it's Legacy, and his opponent has a Painter's Servant on blue in play, and so Chris clearly wants to find enough basic forests to like cast a Primeval Titan, something like that, you know. And so he plays the 1-mana tutor, where you look at the top 5 cards and you find a colorless card and you put it in your hand. That they use to find Cloud Pose, and he casts this card and he sees like a pile of lands and he can't click on any of them because they're all blue. that was one of my favorite interactions.
That's insane.
There's also the sort of Fire and Ice interaction that everyone misses. If there's a Painter's Servant on blue in play, you're not equipping that thing, dude.
Yeah. Painter's Servant's a sweet card. I love it. I cast it a lot in Mental Magic. Painter's Servant, Grindstone people. It's a sweet way to win.
I always I have a pretty high win rate in Mental Magic, but it's usually not in any clever way. I'm just like turn 1 Trinisphere somehow, and like people just don't get to play Magic, and that's I just do it over and over again.
Yeah, we always play Legacy ban lists. Nothing too crazy. The games are fun and interactive.
What? Who wants that?
Why would I ever do
that? Well, we've been going for a while now. I think we've got like a good set here. Does anyone have any final thoughts for Josh? Does Josh have anything he wants to get off of his chest?
Oh, I certainly appreciate you guys having me on the show. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks for being on, especially putting up with all of the technical difficulties. You have been a definite trooper, and that has been amazing. I forgive you for not telling us where the bodies are buried. And with that, we are...
Maybe next time.
We are out.